Welcome to my retrospective show at the Fairfield Library called Wits, and I'm going to take you through a little tour of samples of work I've done over the last 40 years of my life as an artist. And everything is represented in a small sampling, not necessarily in chronological order because the dimensions of the room made it a little difficult to do that. But this is the first piece in the show, and I dragged this out of the water after the storm in the Sound, and it's a metaphor for maybe the end of my wit and using all the different materials that I have collected through the years and used in my art. I want to say that a retrospective has been a very, very interesting experience for me. First, I thought it sort of represented the end and that maybe I wouldn't do any more work, but it's been fascinating to review one's body of work, pick out the things that really were special, and I found that I even have moved forward, so I have new work that I will show you at the end. So the show starts here with a statement that says, I've been creating and exhibiting art for 40 years, and it ends by saying my goal is always the search for what I believe to be the truth. I say that I discern an attitude that's a mix of humor, irony, criticism, judgment. My interest in my art is always to convey an idea or to express an emotion that I have, get it out of my system, and hopefully the audience will understand what I have in mind and also see some of their own issues explained in the art. So the first section is my shoe series, which I did in the 80s after meeting a shoe artist in Argentina and being very fascinated by his work with a one-day coffee with him. And I went on to make 75 or 80 shoes over the course of the next 5 or 6 years. And they were exhibited in Zurich and in New York in the Stuart Weitzman shop on Madison Avenue. Some of these shoes are owned by people, and for some of them I've had prints made from the old slides. This is one of my favorites, which is called Feathering Her Own Nest. And it was like the first statement I made where a woman was supporting herself and taking care of herself. That was a breakthrough shoe. This is a Freudian slipper. This is a corporate climber, a female corporate climber. This is called Stepping Out with My Babies, which was done for a friend who said once she had a baby, she never felt she could get dressed up and really look cool and sexy. She felt she was always dragging her motherhood. Then this wall is a collection of photographs of things that are not included in the show, that were either the commissions for outdoor life-size sculptures that obviously wouldn't fit, or other work that you don't see in the show, including the proposal of horse bookends that are going to be on display in the front of Stanford, UConn Stanford. I think that opens at the beginning of June. And here's a picture of me receiving my bigger-than-life fiberglass horse. And this was the cow. So anyway, this was a lot of fun. I had second thoughts about doing this wall, but in the end I found it very, very enjoyable. A series of encaustic pieces that were done for a show called Self-Improvement in the 90s. Coffee cups and conversations done in the 80s when I moved to Westport from Larchmont and thought that I had made so many moves, I had lived in so many places, but somehow this was a difficult move. I felt I was losing friends and saying goodbye to many people. So I recorded conversations with my friends. This whole series was about friendship. A show that was very recent called Taste of Your Own Medicine, which was a medical show where I only included pieces that had to do with medicine. And in this show, there were two pieces from that past show. One is A Taste of Your Own Medicine, and the other is Bones of Contention. And these are, I don't know if you can see it, cream of criticism, tincture of bitterness, unguent of anger, solution of sarcasm, hint of hurtfulness. I've actually sold some of these, though it's hard to find the right person to give this to. One of my friends gave her son Serum of Sarcasm. This is a very, well, one of the early pieces that I did when I lived in Europe as a banker's wife. And this is called A Corporate Executive Wife Caught in a Snow Flurry. That was done in Zurich in 1978, and represents one of hundreds of drawings that I did, pen and ink drawings that were exhibited in Europe. The pants were also part of a self-improvement series. What was interesting putting this show together was I could see my own, I could see the threads in my own work. It made me feel much more authentic. Clothes, knives, broken things. What else? What are other themes? Words. Well, at one point I was a writer, so a copywriter, and I love words. And often the word is what starts the artwork. Sometimes it's the collection. Sometimes just buying a very large box of knives in a flea market is what will start a body of work. So these are some pre-nooks, bookmarks that I designed from a jewelry collection. Most everything I do has a strong title and a strong meaning, and every once in a while I do something that's just free form, and I'm always called out on it. So about 5 people asked me exactly what that means and exactly what that says. And luckily somebody bought it, so I don't have to answer that anymore. The baggage series, I did 10 suitcases. I figured that I was bringing my artwork to shows and then picking it up and taking it home. So I might as well work in suitcases. And then I loved the idea of baggage that we carry on. And this is called Catholic Carry On and On and On and On. And I mentioned in my statement that it speaks to the baggage many members of the Catholic Church carry with them through their lives, often long after their religious ardor has dimmed. And then I did a print of that. So in certain cases you'll see the 3-dimensional shoe and a print, and in this case the baggage, the suitcase, and a print. The Chosen was from a show that I did called Rockabye Baby, and this was my first abortion. It really is about abortion, and I particularly like this piece. I find the chosen child is very, very special. Whereas this was really powerful statement for me. It's called Eros Interruptus, or it could be called Artiste Interruptus, and it's my wedding picture on an iron and my life as an artist. So I was really talking about how one's art life can be inhibited by one's other responsibilities. Or another feminist statement, also this was from the same show, and that's called 100 Cuts. The show was called Unveiled, and it was part of the New Now series, and these 2 pieces were included. This piece called Voir dire, a jury of your peers, being judged by a jury of your peers, was part of my Bach series, and this was done during the O.J. trial, which I was very fascinated by. And to me, it was turning justice on its head. And I was trying to depict the absurdity of a jury of your peers. What does that mean? And this is the other piece I mentioned that didn't really have a meaning, but I just liked the way it looked, and I suggested to somebody who was visiting this show that I didn't have a really good title, and he said, what about From the Mouths of Babes? So that's what I have retitled it. Fragments of my memories, fragments of selected memories of my life so far. I took plates, I wrote my memories on the plates, and then I smashed them. It was a very, very cathartic thing to do, and very interesting for me. I forced myself to stay with a particular memory for a long time. And this was actually created for a show at the Westport Art Center called Memories. The give and take box, take something cool, leave something cooler. When I first exhibited this, there was a model ship that I put in, and the chief of the fire department of Westport looked at the ship and wanted it, took off his badge and put his badge in the box and took the ship. And I immediately took his badge. Cutting Edge was a real gut response to a meeting where every time I suggested the name of a photographer to include in an exhibit, I was told that person wasn't cutting edge. So I went home and made cutting edge photography. This is Good Bones. As you can see, I use bones over and over again in that piece, in Bones of Contention, which are all the things my husband and I disagree about. And there's also a bone in here which is called, Unfortunately She Didn't Have Her Father's Good Bones. Here again you see a crucifix. So I'm using the same materials over and over. And of course, the most astounding thing for me was I painted this in 1965. It was purchased by a friend, and I saw it several times. Then I borrowed it back for this show. It was in the show. And my son looked at it and said, Mom, did you notice what was on the top of the dresser? And I looked closely, and at the top of the dresser is a cross. So I thought, wow, I've really been sort of hung up on this issue for a long, long time. So it's probably pretty authentic. And finally, just because it was so important to me to have a retrospective and not feel like I wasn't going to do any more work, this is a typewriter that was recently included in a show in Richfield, a very important show about gender. And I contributed that piece about my granddaughter who was writing poems that she let no one read. I was the only one that could read them. And then this typewriter is called Juliet, and a year and a half has gone by, and Zoe Bentley has decided that yes, she would let people read her poem. So here's Juliet. And actually her father read that poem for the first time when he came to the opening. And since then I have done another typewriter called War Stories and another typewriter called Writer's Block. And I mention on my sign that I love machines and I love old machines, and I have a large collection of typewriters, and little by little I'm creating. I've done 4, and I have 4 more in my studio underway. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to show you my work over 40 years. Thank you.